My name is Anna, and I'm 32 years old. 18 months ago, I started designing a fintech platform in my living room. I shared every draft, every wireframe, with my older sister Jessica for feedback. Last week, I discovered she had secretly formed a company around my concept and was pitching it to the exact investor I had targeted for months. She walked into that boardroom and presented my life's work as her own. What she didn't know was that I had kept everything. And I was walking in right behind her. This is the story of how the person I trusted most tried to steal my future, and how 18 months of hidden evidence shut it all down in a single afternoon. But to understand what happened in that boardroom, you need to go back to the night I first showed Jessica my idea. It was a Tuesday night in February 2023. Jessica came over to my apartment in San Francisco, the one with the bay windows that looked out over Divisadero. I had been working on something for 3 months in secret, a platform that would let gig workers access microloans based on their transaction history instead of a credit score. I called it Fair Ledger. I was so nervous to show her. She was my big sister, the one who always had the perfect job in marketing, the perfect marina apartment, the perfect life. When she saw the wireframes, she lit up. Anna, this is brilliant, she said. You need to show this to investors. I can help you get meetings. Over the next 18 months, I built Fair Ledger piece by piece. I sent Jessica every update, every version history, early wireframes from March 2023, a full pitch deck by June, financial models by September. I even took photos of my whiteboard sessions after our calls, messy diagrams with sticky notes and flowcharts. Jessica is in the background of half those photos, coffee mug in hand, nodding along. She gave detailed feedback, asked smart questions. I thought she was being the supportive big sister. I thought she was helping me refine my vision. I didn't realize she was taking notes for her own. 3 weeks ago, a Google alert pinged on my phone. I had set it to track Meridian Capital, the venture firm where my dream investor worked. James Chen. He focused on fintech for underserved communities. I'd been researching him for a year, tailoring my pitch for his exact thesis. The alert said Meridian was hosting a founder pitch for a new company called Fairpath, a nano-lending platform for gig workers. The listed founder was Jessica Anderson. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. I clicked through to the Fairpath website. It was my design, my tagline, my value proposition. She hadn't even changed the color palette. I called her immediately. Her voice was light, casual. Anna, hey, what's up? I asked her what Fairpath was. A long pause. Then she sighed like I was being dramatic. We've been brainstorming for years, Anna. The concept evolved. I didn't think you'd mind. I reminded her that I had timestamped documentation going back to the first sketch. She laughed. Those could mean anything. Validated ideas don't prove ownership. I hung up, hands shaking. The pitch was scheduled for 2 p.m. the next day. I had 18 hours. I spent that night in my living room, phone in one hand, a timeline of evidence forming on my laptop. Every file I had ever created, every email I had sent with attachments, every dated version of the deck, 18 months of receipts. I couldn't stop her from walking into that boardroom, but I could make sure the truth walked in behind her. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my floor surrounded by evidence, building a timeline so airtight no one could question it. I exported metadata logs from Figma showing every design iteration from February 2023 onward. I pulled email threads where I sent Jessica version 16 of the pitch deck, version 22, the final financial model with my name in the file properties. I found the whiteboard photos from our living room sessions, zoomed in on the clock on the microwave in the background, showing 11:42 p.m. on March 8, 2023. Jessica was in the frame, leaning against the counter, holding a glass of wine. I printed everything. 247 pages, organized, flagged, and tabbed. At 8 a.m., I called Meridian Capital's office. I didn't identify myself as Anna Chen, wronged sister. I said my name was Anna Morris, an early-stage fintech founder, and I'd heard James Chen was taking meetings. The receptionist was polite but guarded. Mr. Chen's calendar is full today, she said. I asked if there was any way to get 5 minutes before his 2 p.m. session. She paused. Let me check. I held my breath. She came back. He has a brief window at 1:45. Can you be here? I said I'd be there at 1:30. I spent the morning reviewing every interaction I'd had with Jessica over the past year and a half. All the times she said, we should do this, our project, our vision. At the time, I thought she was being supportive. Now I realized she was claiming ownership in real time, embedding the idea that this was a shared effort. She had inserted herself into my narrative, and I had let her because she was my sister. But here's the thing. In all those months, she never wrote a single line of code. Not one. She had never logged into the development environment. Her fingerprints were nowhere on the actual product. She had taken the concept, but she couldn't build it. That was my only advantage. I arrived at Meridian Capital at 1:30 sharp. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place where fortunes are made and broken in 30-minute slots. I carried a leather portfolio with 247 pages of truth inside. The receptionist directed me to a small waiting area. Through the internal glass walls, I could see a conference room being prepped for the 2 p.m. pitch. A projector screen was down, water pitchers on the table, and then I saw her. Jessica walked through the lobby with two associates, dressed in a tailored navy suit, carrying a sleek laptop bag. She didn't see me. She was too busy rehearsing her lines, gesturing confidently at her team. My stomach twisted. The woman who had taught me how to braid my hair and snuck me candy during church was about to sell my company as hers. At 1:45, James Chen's assistant led me into his office. He was younger than I expected, mid-40s, sharp eyes, a reputation for asking uncomfortable questions. I sat down and said, "Mr. Chen, I'm not actually a founder looking for investment. My name is Anna Chen, and the woman pitching to you in 15 minutes is my sister. She's going to present a nano-lending platform for gig workers called FairPath. That platform is mine." He leaned back in his chair and said, "That's a serious accusation." I opened my portfolio and laid it on his desk. I showed him my first wireframe dated February 12, 2023, 5 months before Jessica's earliest file. I showed him version histories with my name embedded in the metadata. I handed him the whiteboard photos, pointing out Jessica in the background, the date visible on the microwave clock. I played him a voice memo I had recorded during one of our brainstorming calls, Jessica's voice saying, "Anna, this could change everything for you. You need to protect this." He listened without expression. Then he asked, "Is there anything she might claim as her own development?" I told him everything she had contributed was feedback, nothing built, nothing coded. He looked at his watch. "She's about to pitch. What do you want me to do?" I told him I wanted to be in the room. He hesitated for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Sit in the back, don't say anything until I signal. If what you're telling me is true, I'll give you the floor." At 2 p.m. exactly, Jessica walked into the conference room, smiling, confident. She didn't see me in the corner, partially obscured by a pillar. Her presentation was flawless. She used my slides, my narrative, my data. She answered questions about the market opportunity and the technology stack with rehearsed precision. James asked her who had built the prototype. She said her team had developed it in-house. He asked about the origin of the concept. She said it came from years of observing gig economy pain points. Then he asked the question that changed everything. "What's your background in software engineering, Jessica?" She hesitated. "I come from marketing, but I've collaborated closely with developers." He nodded slowly, then turned toward the back of the room. "Ms. Chen, would you like to introduce yourself?" I stood up. Jessica's face went white. Her associates looked confused. I walked to the front of the room, carrying my portfolio. "My name is Anna Chen," I said, "and I built FairPath. These are my designs, my files, my 18 months of work, which my sister just presented as her own." Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. "Anna, what are you doing?" I opened the portfolio and began to lay out the evidence. But here's what I didn't expect. Jessica didn't panic. She smiled a cold, prepared smile. And then she said, "I was wondering when you'd show up. But before you ruin yourself, you should know I have something you don't." She reached into her bag and pulled out a document. My name was at the bottom, and it was signed. The document was a co-founder agreement. I recognized the letterhead, my own template, something I downloaded months ago intending to formalize an arrangement with a potential technical partner. I never used it, but Jessica had. She had printed it out, typed my name under the signature line, and now held it up for everyone in the room to see. The language was dense, but the meaning was clear. It assigned 50% intellectual property rights to any co-inventor who contributed to the concept. And there, scrawled in ink at the bottom, was my signature. My first instinct was that it was forged. I opened my mouth, but James Chen raised a hand. He examined the document carefully. "Ms. Chen," he said, speaking to me, "is this your signature?" I looked closer. The ink was slightly smudged. The loop on the A was different from my usual slant. I said I needed to compare it to my passport. James nodded and I pulled out my ID. The signatures didn't match. I pointed out the discrepancies, the angle of the crossbar, the pressure lines. Jessica's face flickered, but only for a moment. "I have witnesses," she said. "Anna signed it in front of me after one of our whiteboard sessions." She named a date. March 8th, 2023, and that's when I felt my heart stop, not from fear, from clarity. March 8th was the same night I had the whiteboard photo with the microwave clock visible at 11:42 p.m. Jessica wasn't in the background holding a wine glass. She was in the foreground, sitting at the table, pushing a paper toward me. I remembered now. She had asked me to sign something that night, a quick form for a networking database she was building for founders. I'd been so focused on my prototype I barely glanced at it. I signed, I trusted her. But I also had proof of what I was doing right before and after that moment. The time-stamped whiteboard photos, the file saves at 11:45 p.m., the email I sent her at midnight with an updated financial model. The metadata would show I had been creating IP hours before and after that signature, predating the document, post-dating it. My entire timeline surrounded that one moment of deception. James leaned forward. Jessica, he said, you're claiming she assigned you half the IP on March 8th. Can you show me any contribution you made to the product before that date? Jessica's confident mask cracked. I provided strategic direction, she said. Marketing insights, user research, that's contribution. James didn't blink. Marketing insights are not intellectual property creation. Did you write code? Did you design architecture? Did you produce any technical documentation? She looked at her associates. They wouldn't meet her eyes. I collaborated in the ideation phase. James turned to me. Ms. Chen, can you show me the creation timeline for the core technology? I said yes. I pulled out my laptop and opened Figma's version history. Every iteration, every commit, every timestamped file, including the ones from February, 3 weeks before the March 8th signature. I showed him my first wireframe dated February 12th. I showed him the prototype that had been fully designed by February 28th, all before the alleged assignment. But here's where it gets worse. As I scrolled through the evidence, I noticed something I'd never seen before: shared access logs. I had given Jessica view-only access to my Figma board months ago, but the logs showed something irregular. On February 21st, there was a download of all files. Not a view, a full export. The user was listed as guest viewer, but the IP address matched Jessica's home office. She hadn't just stolen the concept after it was finished. She had extracted the entire design, packaged the moment she decided to build her own version. She had been working on FairPath for over a year, right under my nose, using every update I sent her. I said it out loud. She exported all my work on February 21st, 2023. That's 17 days before she had me sign anything. James stared at the export log, his expression hardened. Ms. Jessica, you obtained proprietary materials before any alleged co-founder agreement. That's not a dispute over equity, that's theft. Jessica's voice rose. It was never finished. It was a shared concept, material practice in our industry. James cut her off. Material practice would be filing a patent, registering a provisional, or documenting contributions. You have none of that. What you have is a downloaded file, an ex post facto signature, and a presentation built on her work. He gestured toward the door. This meeting is over. Meridian Capital will not be proceeding with FairPath. We will also be sharing our findings with our legal team and our portfolio companies. Jessica stood frozen. Her associates were already packing up, glancing at each other with visible panic. She looked at me, not with remorse but with cold fury. You think you've won. Just burned your last connection in this industry. No one will work with someone who drags family drama into a boardroom. I didn't answer. She walked out. The door clicked shut. The room was silent. James Chen turned to me. Ms. Chen, he said, I was supposed to allocate $1 million to a new fintech platform today. That allocation is still open. Would you like to tell me what FairPath is supposed to do? I felt a wave of exhaustion and relief so profound I almost couldn't speak. I can do better, I said. I can show you. That was the moment everything shifted. The evidence didn't just stop my sister. It opened a door I thought she had slammed shut. But I still had one decision left: what to do about Jessica. She had tried to destroy me. Now I had the power to destroy her back. And what I chose next surprised everyone, including myself. I waited until after 6 that evening to call her. I sat in my car outside Meridian Capital, the portfolio still on the passenger seat, the adrenaline finally draining. Jessica answered on the third ring. Her voice was flat, exhausted. I told her I wanted to meet. She said there was nothing left to say. I said I wasn't calling to punish her. I was calling to offer her a job. There was a long silence. Then she laughed, bitter. A job? You're offering me a job. My little sister, the one who couldn't even order her own coffee until she was 20, is offering me a role in her company. I told her it was still a good concept, that the market opportunity was real, and that she obviously understood the space even if she'd gone about it the wrong way. I offered her a junior marketing coordinator position, a chance to earn back trust, to build something legitimate, to prove that whatever had driven her to steal from me wasn't the whole story. She could still be in the family in the fold. She didn't have to be the villain. Her response was calm and final. I don't work for little sisters who humiliate me in boardrooms. You made your choice when you walked into that building. We're done. I asked if she understood what she was walking away from. She said she'd find another investor, another idea, another path, that she didn't need my charity. I told her it wasn't charity, it was a lifeline. She hung up. I sat in silence for a long time, watching the traffic lights cycle. I had done the hardest thing, I had offered her grace, and she had spit on it. That was her choice. Mine was to move forward. James Chen wired the seed round 3 weeks later. $1 million, exactly what he'd allocated for Fair Path. We renamed the company. I kept Fair in the title because it still meant something to me, but I let the team vote on the rest. We settled on Fair Wage. Same mission, different brand, fully mine. The team moved fast. We launched the beta in November, onboarding 2,000 gig workers in the first month. The microloans performed better than projected. Default rates were under 4%. By March, we had closed our Series A $8 million. The term sheet came from a top-tier fund, not Meridian this time, but they stayed on as advisors. James Chen still checks in once a month. He once told me, the best founders are the ones who build through fire. You walked through yours and kept walking. Jessica tried to launch a competing platform in January. She called it Giglend. Without a working prototype, without any proprietary technology, and with a reputation tarnished by the Meridian incident, it never got off the ground. 2 angel investors backed out after a single phone call. I heard through a mutual contact that she had to shut it down by March. She's now back in marketing, working for an agency in Chicago. We haven't spoken since that phone call in the car. I don't know if we ever will. Some people believe family loyalty means protecting people who hurt you. I believe it means protecting yourself from people who will hurt you again. The hardest part wasn't losing her. The hardest part was accepting that I'd never really had her the way I thought I did. I still have the evidence folder. 247 pages. I keep it in a locked drawer in my office, not because I need it anymore, but because it reminds me that the truth has a weight. It lands. It lands on the day it's most needed, and it lands hardest on the people who thought they could bury it. I thought this story was about a startup and a stolen idea. It wasn't. It was about what you do when the person who's supposed to be your first ally becomes your first adversary, and how you survive when the betrayal comes from inside the house. Here's what I learned. The startup world loves to talk about trust. Trust your gut, trust your team, trust the process. But trust without verification is just hope dressed up in business casual. My timestamp files didn't just save my company, they gave me back my story. The truth didn't need a lawyer, it needed a clock, so I'll leave you with this. If you're building something right now, if you're sending drafts to people you love and trust, tag it, stamp it, lock it in time. You don't do it because you're paranoid. You do it because one day, the person across the table might look you in the eye and claim it was never yours. And in that moment, you want to be able to breathe and say, actually, here's the receipt. I don't know if my sister will ever come back. I don't know if she should. I know that I built something real, something that wasn't stolen, and something that's still growing. And if my story resonates with you, if you've ever had an idea taken or a trust broken, I'd love to hear what you would have done. Drop a comment below. Let me know where in the world you're watching from, and if this hit you, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. I'm Anna, this is Fair Wage. And this was the story of how my own sister tried to steal my startup and learned that the truth always has a timestamp.